All right, so everything else I'm going to do from here is absolutely necessary that you do it in a proper order. Doing these things out of order will cause your guitar to either play improperly or be out of tune. So it is very imperative that you do things in this order or you're gonna have issues. And that's on you for not listening. All right, next thing I'm going to do is tune this instrument up to the tuning that I want it to be. Get my guitar strings. I actually am retarded and I cannot find my tuner, so we're gonna go right into our computer, into my DAW, and tune it that way. All right, so for my tuning, I pretty much do standard flat. That's just me. But do whatever tuning you want, doesn't matter. But you're gonna tune your strings up first. If you want to do, try anything else before this, you're gonna have an issue. One thing I wanted to point out, I forgot about this earlier. As you can see, I took all the strings off at once and I did not mess with the truss rod. You don't really need to either adjust the tension on the truss rod to take it off, or do one string at a time. People are worried about the neck warping, this and that. Wood's flexible, man. It's much more flexible than you believe. So yes, it's gonna shift back from the tension of the truss rod. You're not gonna crack your neck unless it's unbelievably dry, and then it probably was already cracking on the tension of the strings anyway. Don't worry about it, not an issue. Anyone tells you otherwise is dumb. Straight up. Doesn't know what they're talking about. And if you think you know what you're talking about and you want to argue with me, come fight me for it. I don't care. Anyway, yeah, that's it. All right, so we're tuned up. Personally, at this point, I like to stretch my strings right here, just because everything you're going to be doing from here is really dependent on exactly how much tension these strings are going to be putting on the guitar, and especially the neck, according to whatever tuning you're doing. So anything that's going to stretch and loosen and go flat is going to really throw off what you're doing at any other point in time from here. So stretch your strings. What I'm going to do when I stretch my strings, they're pretty close. Personally, I'll pull them a little sharp because they're going to drop anyway. And they already dropped a little bit from the tension pulling the neck into a bow, because these top ones were in tune at the time and now they're flat. It just goes to show you that how much necks will bow. So what I'll do is I'll take my fingers in the middle, kind of move up a little bit. For the higher strings, you don't want to pull a lot. They will stretch as you pull. You don't have to have ridiculous amount of tension. If you're keeping a small amount of tension, after retuning over time, it's still going to work. So you don't want to do a lot because you will snap them. I snapped one a couple weeks ago when I put the standard set of Ernie balls on here because it was set of 9s and, bitch strings in my opinion. That's just me personally. But just a little bit of tension. You want to go up the string. That way you're kind of stretching the whole area, not just one spot. You want to go up all of them. A couple little yanks. As I get to these lower strings, I'm putting quite a bit more tension as well too, because they are stronger. They're not going to snap. You got to really wrench on them like an asshole in order to do that. And if you pull that much tension to snap one of these lower ones, you deserve it. Or the shit was just faulty, but I'm going to more say you probably deserved it. All right, so then we're going to come down. Yeah, we went at least a half step or more from our target tuning. Yeah, it was more than a full step. That one actually stayed pretty well in tune. That's weird. Yeah, more than a half step. And this is one of those things where it could take a while. You could do this for 15-20 minutes. And it's just kind of how it goes. Some of these lower strings, like this one, stretches more than a step and a half at a time, but that's just kind of how it goes. But you just literally keep doing this until you can pull on the string and it doesn't go out of tune. And then there's no more stretching left to happen in the metal, and it is where it's going to sit for pretty much the duration of its life at that point. Yeah, you'll still have to adjust tuning for slight stretching over long periods of time, but you got to play a lot and or your neck has to move in order for that to happen. And this will provide great tuning stability Especially if you change strings just before a show, you're gonna find by stretching your strings this way, you're going to tune a lot less during a show. It's gonna be very stable. And if you have a Floyd Rose bridge and you don't do this, you're asking for problems. It's going to be a nightmare. If you stretch them beforehand, your Floyd Rose should stay in tune unbelievably well. I hear constantly people have issues with Floyd Rose. Oh, tuning problems, it just won't stay in tune, I don't know what to do. We probably didn't stretch your strings properly, turd. So, stretch them the way they should, and you won't have that issue. You know, so, just saying. Floyd Rose aren't the nightmare most people think they are. You just gotta know what you're doing. Alright, well, there we go, that's number 2. This is what, 3 now that we're stretching it 3 times? And we may do 4 to 5, but you just do whatever it takes to, you know, make sure they're stretched. Okay, so now it's in tune. Next thing we're going to do, or I'm going to do, I don't know why I keep saying we, because you're not doing it, you're just here with me. Next thing I'm going to do is adjust the relief in the neck. So, for those of you who have no idea what relief is, there is a bow in this neck right now. Reason being, so this string, when you pluck it, rotates in a circle. And if you've ever taken a rubber band or anything, stretched it and plucked it, you'll notice that the rotation area in the center, as opposed to the ends, is much bigger. So if you have a perfectly flat fretboard, what generally will happen with the most setups the way people have them, is that this rotation of string will be big enough to hit the fret. You can't hear it here because it's actually more above than it needs to be, but it will cause buzzing in the middle frets. So you'll play here, it's fine, play here, it's fine, you press here, and then next thing you know, it sounds like dead frets. And there's nothing wrong with your fretboard. There's just too deep of a valley here for it to, string to clear the crest of the other upper frets. So the relief is basically adjusting how much bow is in this neck to be ideal for the circular rotation here, so that you get an even amount of play across the whole fretboard. That's basically all it is. So for a standard setup, well, first of all, I'm going to show you what tool you need to use. Best thing to use for this is a set of feeler gauges. You can get them at some hardware stores or some auto stores, but most hardware stores, I got this at Ace Hardware for about $5. Simple, easy. What it does is measures in thousandths of an inch from 1,000 to who knows what. This is generally used for spark plugs spacing, if you've ever changed spark plugs, but you can use it for this. That's what you need. So general setup is 15,000ths of an inch, which that means from the top of the string to the bottom crest of the bow of the neck here, it's going to be 15,000ths of an inch difference. You can go a little different for some of these 8 strings, especially with a huge string like this, especially if you're doing drop E or even lower than that, 9 strings even, you might want to go a little bit heavier as far as like a 7.017, so 17,000ths of an inch bow, just to give a little bit more room. It's not completely necessary. Even with a bass, I'll do 15,000ths, and it seems to work really good for me personally. Some people will go up to about 20,000ths on a bass, just depending on the feel. Now this does change the feel of the instrument in quite a few ways, so I would say experiment with it on when you're changing strings to see what feels best for you. It's going to take you a year or two because you're going to need to play on the instrument for a while. You really don't want to have to do a full setup again, because every time you adjust this, everything else is going to change as well too. So, but anyway, 15,000ths of an inch is kind of standard for a guitar setup. Most people feel comfortable with it. I feel comfortable with it. I'm not a weirdo like Stevie Ray Vaughan was that wanted a flat fretboard. I don't know what's wrong with him. Anyway, so yeah, what you're gonna do is put a capo on the first fret, and if you don't have a capo, which I do not because I'm dumb, and I don't know where mine is at this point in time, I'm gonna show you a hack. It's a wonderful hack. It's a great hack. Works fantastically when it comes to setups. So I'll be right back and I'll show you that. All right, so a lot of you watching this will have hair ties. If you don't, to your girlfriends, whatever, rubber bands, whatever you got to do for this. So take a pencil. I don't recommend a pen. Plastic bends easier. Pencil's more rigid and you kind of need it straight. And hook them under here and use that as your capo. Also, heck, if you're a live musician, you need a capo. Boom. There you go. So all you want to do is when you do this, push to the side, make sure that your strings are completely flat against the first fret. So next thing you need to do is you're going to tip it up right. You're going to press at the fret above the body joint, because your neck is not going to bow once it's on the body. If it's too much wood, it's just going to stay flat. So you don't need to measure that point because it's not moving. So we're going to press here. I'm going to find somewhere in the center, which is probably my 8th fret. Now when you do this, you actually, because your frets are curved, your fretboard has a radius to it. You don't want to go completely flat like this. If you don't go the wrong angle, it's going to hit your string and you're going to throw it off. So you want to go with the curvature of the fretboard. And you want to press it under the string and measure the gap. So if you have too much bow in the neck, when you press this under here, you're going to have a gap underneath the string and in between this piece of metal. Now, the fuck? You do not want to start with me. Shut up, TV. Try and teach a lesson here. And if you don't have enough bow, when you press it in here, you're going to see it bump the string up. You may want to have a friend or someone or hold a light mounted above you so you can see this well, because it will be very minute differences and a lot of people don't have the eyesight for this. So I might get my head in the way of the camera, but I got to see this anyway. So I actually have a decently substantial gap, about 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to guess this is about 17 thousandths of an inch bow. I'm going to measure that real quick just to see where I'm starting at, so I can tell how far I really need to move this thing to get it where it needs to be. Now that is right. Ooh, I caught the camera. All right, now that is right at the point where I can see it kind of touching the fret, maybe it's 16 thousandths. Or touching the string, kind of moving it. So that tells me there's too much bow. Now if you have too much bow, what we're going to do is tighten the truss rod. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Don't forget that, we're going to be screwed. Now with these truss rods, 90% of modern instruments, I actually don't know a maker that doesn't do this at this point in time, has what's called a double, it's not double lock, a two-way truss rod. So that also means you can tighten it. If you go the opposite direction, it will tighten in the other way and pull the neck the opposite direction into a back bow. If you're working with a vintage instrument, you may not have that. It may, once it's loose, it's loose. That's pretty much it. It's very rare cases you need a back bow in it. I don't think it's an issue usually, so we're not going to really worry about that. But with too much bow here, I need to tighten the truss rod to pull it flatter. If you don't have enough, you need to loosen it to pull the neck forward, bow it more, and get the right amount of relief that you need. So we're going to take this now. Most manufacturers being overseas, or you're going to end up using a metric set of Allen wrenches. You sometimes will use the standard, but it's very, very rare. Just because even if it is made in the US, a lot of times the parts that are being ordered are foreign manufacturers of the parts themselves. Like the truss rod was probably not going to be USA made. So even if the car is USA made, if the part's not, it's still going to be in a metric. Which is fine, keeps it uniform, which is great. So we're going to tighten this sucker. As you can see, I haven't tightened it a lot. I don't need to tighten it a lot. Just went maybe a quarter turn overall. And that's all you need, quarter turn at a time. I think a lot of people are afraid to do this because they're afraid to mess up the neck or crack it or warp it too much. And if you're just, anything you're doing on the guitar, if you're doing small increments at a time and checking before you go back, you have a pretty low risk of messing it up. If you're just cranking forever, you're just being dumb. Stop it. Have some patience. It's not this crazy thing that you got to worry about. So, all right, so next thing you're gonna do, because you actually bowed the neck a bit and pulled it back, it's going to actually make these strings go a little sharp on average. So you need to retune to make sure that your tuning and the tension on the strings pulling on the neck is proper. Put the cable back on and measure again. That's perfect, because while I'm doing this, I can actually hear the metal hitting the string, but I don't see it moving personally. It's like making contact out. So that's almost perfectly at 15 thousandths of an inch, which is exactly the bow I want. So we're gonna leave it at that. Next thing you're gonna want to do is adjust your string height. Again, you're going to use your cape out, because this nut is not sitting on the first fret, so that's not going to tell you accurately how high this is according to where you need to put it down. That's going to actually lift it up. I don't know if you can see, but it moves a good 32nd of an inch. It's quite a bit, so that's an issue. Anyway, put your capo on. And then you're going to take a 6-inch ruler. This one has millimeters on one side, 32nd of an inch on the other. I work in standard because I'm American and we're stupid and still use the standard system instead of the metric like the rest of the world, but I'll measure the metric so you can see it as well too. So with that first fret pressed down all the way, you're going to measure from the top of the fret to the bottom of the string. So I'm sitting right at about 4/32 of an inch, which is actually quite a bit on the high end. And the low, I'm sitting at just below 2/32 of an inch. Oh, hold on, at 3. So on a standard setup, let's see, look at my E string. E string sitting right about 3. So that's actually standard for a setup, is for a 6 string, 3/32 to 2/32 at the top. And then you kind of want to gradually taper it down across here. If you have a Floyd Rose or something where the whole bridge moves at once, it's going to be in the curvature of the fretboard, so you don't have to worry about it. It's going to taper on some. But what I do personally is I'll set my E string at 3/32, my low E, start playing on the fretboard, and then same thing with the ones up, kind of play on the fretboard up here as well too, and just slowly bring it down until, you know, you can have a little bit of buzzing, but to where there's not really any buzzing going on whatsoever. And I'll do that with each individual string. Yeah, there's a little buzz on there. Sometimes you can go a little lower if you don't pick as hard as I do. That's part of the nice thing about these thicker strings. You can generally go a little bit lower on the fretboard because they don't move as much as you pick super hard. But it's still comfortable for me personally. Generally, if you're changing strings, even the string gauge, as long as you set the relief, you really shouldn't have to adjust the bridge height if it's comfortable for you. But go ahead, you know, do whatever you want to do. There's that. Once you get the string height set up, next thing is going, well, really the last thing in general, is going to be your intonation on your fretboard. So, for those of you that don't get that, we'll show what it is. Also, with your string height, anytime these little nuts on your bridge are going to be for your string height, up and down, in case you don't understand the mechanics of a bridge or where the placement of everything is. So, all right, intonation. Now, intonation is literally about the most important thing that you can do on this instrument. Getting If you don't have proper intonation, it's going to sound like absolute crap. You'll tune your strings, they'll be perfectly in tune open, you're going to hit any chord and it's going to sound like absolute shit because it's not going to be in tune. The rest of the band's going to look at you and go, what the hell are you doing? That is terrible. Please stop. So, and it is the last thing you need to do, because any adjustment you make on this instrument, string height, the string size, the relief in the neck, all are going to affect the intonation. So if you do your intonation first and you mess with anything else, it's going to change and it's not going to work. So that's why there's a reason for the process and in order of what I'm doing here. So for intonation, these screws on the back are going to adjust that. Now, intonation is going to be a change of the string length from your nut to the crest of your bridge. So much affects the intonation that you actually need to intonate and play the strings in the position upright that you'll be doing normally. Because this way, the way the strings are actually pulling it closer to the fretboard, which still means things move. And when it comes to thousandths of an inch movement, it's going to change your tuning completely. So you have to be aware of that. You have to make sure that you're sitting down playing properly. So what you want to do first is, oops, maybe I should plug my guitar back in so I can tune it properly. Ha 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 ha. Stupid. Now when you're tuning this, you want to pick according to how hard you actually pick the thing. You know, you don't want to barely do this, and you want to continually pick it, because when you pick it, it's going to pull the tension and it's going to, you know, look, if you ever swing a swing, it goes slightly less every time, you know, so when it comes back, it's going to be just as hard as the other side. So that's what you're doing. So the tension gets pulled tighter and tighter. So if you pick really hard when you're tuning, your tuning is going to show up sharper than if you're picking soft. And you need it to be as accurate as possible. And you want to continually pick it, because once you let it sit for a while, the string's going to settle and it's going to drop pitch. Very important. Same thing when you're tuning for recording. You want to continually pick, and you want to pick as hard as you normally pick when playing, or average of that, because it's going to be as accurate as possible when you are recording or playing. Okay, so there's a couple things about intonation that are a myth and need to be addressed completely. So this tuning system is not exact. So no matter what you do, none of these across the whole fretboard, it's not going to be perfectly the way it needs to be, perfectly in tune across the whole thing. So you can, you know, do your intonation to the 12th fret to make sure this 12th fret is the exact opposite octave of the open string. But if you were to hit a tuner and go up every one of these frets, some are going to be slightly sharp and slightly flat. Not enough for the human ear to hear the difference, but that's just how it is with these tuning systems. So what you want to do is intonate to the fret range you normally play. So you really need to evaluate your playing style and where you play on your fretboards in order to make sure that it is intonated properly for where you're going to be playing it most. Like Alex Haddad of Archaic, I changed his strings quite a bit for him to do his setups. He kind of plays linearly, which is really interesting. So his lower strings, he's more towards the 1 to about 7th to 9th fret on the fretboard. But as you go up the strings, he gradually goes to where by his high strings, he's around the 12th to 16th fret. So if I make sure the tuning is perfect here on the 9th fret on the high strings, he's going to be out of tune when he's playing up here. And that's not what he wants. He wants it tuned here where he's going to play most. And for these lower strings, he's going to want it between the 1 and 9 range where he plays the most. Now I'm slightly sharp on my G string. So if you are sharp, what that means is this distance, goddamn towel, from the nut to the crest of the bridge needs to lengthen. The further it goes, the lower it's going to drop. If it's too low of a note, you need to make the pitch go higher. You close it in. You make a smaller length. Confusing to a lot of people, but it's a pretty simple thing, really. So we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to tighten this and pull this back just a little bit because it was very, very little out. So I did maybe half a turn on the screw. So then we're gonna come back up here, start with the tuning again. And this is why you really want your strings stretched because you don't want them moving all over the place while you're trying to do this. Like you go from doing that, you know, tuning the open note to this, and then next thing you know, it's like it's dropped on you, because that's going to be a nightmare to try to work with. Okay, perfect. Now me personally, for my last 4 strings, I will intonate to the 9th fret or 7th. Or at least, okay, so my A and E string, I'm rarely playing up here on the 12th. Even though it's perfectly in tune there, I'll go to the 9th. And it's damn close. It's a little sharp by the 7th, but that's okay, because I will play up here quite a bit. But I'm pretty in tune down there. E string. A little flat on the 12th, but, or sharp on the 12th, sorry. On my 7th fret, I'm perfectly in tune. But that's because when it comes to my E string here, I'm playing between 1 and 7, 9 even, more frequently than I am at the 12th. If I'm playing at the 12th, I'm probably playing a string higher. You know, so that way it's more accurate where I generally play it versus up here. So it sounds more in tune according to the way I play my instrument. All right, there you go. After the intonation, you're done. Just remember, if you do travel out of state, if you're a touring musician or anything, you're going to want to check your neck relief and intonation, and in that order. Every time you do, open your case up for a good hour so to let the guitar acclimate to whatever weather you're in, and then do those 2 pieces of the setup. That way it's in proper working order every show and plays the same all the time. So hope this series of videos helped. That way you kind of get a feel for how to set your guitar up personally for you so it plays as best as possible for your style. If you have any more questions or anything that you want me to cover on possible, you know, repairs or anything in a setup that I didn't explain or that you need in further depth, please leave a comment below. I'll be happy to explain as best as possible, maybe make another video if I need to or whatever. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, because I do have more of these that will be coming out. And I hope everyone's having a good end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So Happy New Year, everyone.